Welcome in, everybody, to the Saints Insider Podcast for Tuesday, June the 11th. I'm Zach Ewing with Matthew Paris, Luke Johnson, and Jeff Duncan. All of us wearing our shorts. It's not just Dunk's legs you get to see today.
I know. I like it. A lot of skin.
Some hats. We've just come from Saints practice and open locker room, and it happens to be pretty warm out there in June in New Orleans. That's kind of how it goes. And we've seen a few things, heard a few things. Interesting first day of minicamp for the Saints, and now we're going to podcast about it. So appreciate you all joining us. Subscribe to the channel, like the channel, tell your friends about the channel, and if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, hit that 5-star review for us. Hit the like button right now before we start talking. It's just the click, just right there. It's easy. Guys, Marshon Lattimore and Alvin Kamara were both at minicamp today. They both talked. We're going to discuss that, some of the other things y'all saw out there in the heat. At what was a pretty spirited minicamp practice.
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
I mean,
for
minicamp.
Yeah. No, we get to see some stuff. It's still like a lot of the stuff we see. You know, they did a drill at the end where it was team and everybody's like, oh, we get to see full 11 on 11, and then like the offensive and defensive lines are just like they touch each other and they stop. So everything that we say about these things like comes with that big grain of salt, but I still think that there's enough to glean out of this, especially with some of the big stars back in action today.
Matt, we talked out there, and most of the guys were out there. Juwan Johnson was missing. I believe Brian Bresee was missing. Ryan Ramczyk was missing, who we'll talk about. But for the most part, the guys that we've been wondering about, Marshon Lattimore, Alvin Kamara, as I mentioned, are back out there, pretty much full attendance today.
Yeah, they were fully healthy pretty much. The defense, like it was hard to evaluate the defense in particular in OTAs just because of how many guys were missing. The offense, mostly full attendance, new scheme in place. Guys wanted to be there, try and drill that down. Today was like really the first look of, all right, you've got your guys, we've got our guys. Let's see how they do, and it was pretty entertaining to watch.
Yeah, we saw a couple of highlight plays. Jay Kaner hit Rashid Shaheed on a beautiful bomb into the corner of the end zone.
Don't get Duncan started, man.
Yeah, what's my boy?
Let's wind him up.
Hey, look, I would say if I'm calling a camp MVP so far, I'd have to say number 3 is the camp MVP. I mean, the guys look great on air with no pass rush.
Yeah,
against backups.
Yeah, but I mean, look, I think Derek Carr's looked very good too, though.
Yeah.
He looks comfortable in the offense.
I will say Jameis Winston did not look good against backups in camp last year. That was kind of one of the things we got on him about.
Well, there was some big plays today. That was fun to watch, right?
Yeah,
some
Chris
deep balls.
Olave toasted Marshon Lattimore for
7-on-7s.
Yeah, some big deep balls. Every once in a while they do. They have to keep. That's what I think this offense is going to be, though. I think it's going to be move the chains. When teams start trying to cheat, you go over the top, and the Saints do have players that can do that.
They got the guys to beat you over the top, for sure.
Well, let's start there because you mentioned Olave beating Lattimore, and obviously Marshon Lattimore is one of these guys who he's never gone to OTAs, maybe since his rookie year, maybe second year. It's just not part of his offseason routine. He trains by himself. He shows up for minicamp, and it's frankly never affected him. He's still been a Pro Bowler. Obviously, he's had injuries, but other than that, he's still been a high-level player. So here he shows up today, and he talked after practice and basically said the whole thing between him and DA was a little overblown, that he's here, that he wants to be here, and, that he's going to live happily ever after, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm buying that, but right now they've got to make it work, and they're going to live with this arrangement that they have, and then we'll see where it goes. But, I mean, I think if there was any bad blood there, any disagreement, it's been settled. I think that's clear that they're on the same page now. That communication they had between him and his agents and the Saints has been at least rectified to the point where we're going forward together, and we'll see where it goes after the season.
Matt, you were over there.
I was, yeah, just a little bit. I listened back to it. I put my recorder down and then listened back to it. I think the thing too is it wasn't just necessarily about repairing the Saints' relationship with him, between him and Dennis Allen. He seemed like a player that wanted to remind people that he was is regarded as the best cornerback in the NFL. Like, he still had that chip on his shoulder. He still was very confident about what he still has left at this point of his career. So, you know, Marshon Lattimore is a guy that you listen back to it and it's whoa, versus like his actual tone. He doesn't really seem like that.
Classic Marshon. Yeah.
Yeah, he was like that today. It was he wants to go out and prove that he's the best, and I think he realized that the Saints right now are the best team for him to try and do that. You know, if a teams I don't think necessarily valued him to be that number one corner after 2 injury-riddled seasons, and if they had, he'd maybe somewhere else. But right now, they've repaired their relationship to a point where I think can coexist for 2024.
Well, I think this is the most important thing in this whole discussion is whether he can stay healthy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think Marshon mentioned that.
Yep.
I talked to Tyrann Mathieu today. Tyrann Mathieu mentioned that. Everybody knows how good he can be, but like he's got to be able to stay on the field and prove it. And if he does, it's good for everybody involved. If the Saints want to move on, then his value is much higher. Marshon's still very young. I think he was like 20 years old when he started his NFL career. So I think he's like 28 right now. He's still got several good years ahead of him. If he stays on the field and plays at the level that he knows he's capable of, that Saints know he's capable of, then either it's happy ending for Marshon Lattimore in New Orleans and they got their number one cornerback back in the mix, or it's a much more valuable trade chip with some young guys behind him who might be ready to step into a bigger role. I mean, I think it's only going to be a positive if he stays healthy.
It's healthy, and then its consistency is the other thing, right? Like we saw some performances where he really peaked last year, and even going back 2 years, and then other performances where you're going, that guy is having a big day on Lattimore. What's going on?
Well, and look, I think they addressed that in this offseason. I think that could be a good thing, right? I mean, if you have a motivated, like Matt said, a motivated Marshon Lattimore, that's only going to be good for the Saints and ultimately for him long term when he goes to this next contract. So I think it's that button that got pushed for him this offseason. I heard that today. You could hear he's definitely got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, and I think that's only good. Alvin Kamara said, he goes, I think a lot of us here that have been here a while, all of us kind of got a little comfortable. And I think Lattimore would probably fall into that umbrella too. So if he's got a little edge to him now, 8 years into his career, that's probably a good thing.
Well, that's a good spot to move on and talk about Alvin Kamara because he's the other star who was not at OTAs. He's here for minicamp today as he's supposed to be. Luke, did he get defensive about that? I mean, I just heard the audio from it.
Yeah, no, he didn't. I think he understood the questions, right? Because, look, Alvin has not showed up for OTAs since I think maybe his second season. It's been a long time since he's gone to that particular part of the offseason.
Just like Marshon, yeah.
Just like Marshon. He does his training in Miami. That's where he's comfortable. He's got a young family there. He does his stuff with his family during that time. It's all understandable. But like when you get to a point where the last couple of years he hasn't been the Alvin Kamara that people grew to love from his first couple of years, and then you're bringing in a new scheme, and you see all the buy-in from everybody else who is there. That's where the questions come from. That's why he was asked about it today versus the last couple of years where everybody's like, oh yeah, he's not going to be here for OTAs because he's Alvin Kamara and he does his own thing. So I don't think he was defensive. I think he understood the questions, but he's saying like look, this is my process. This is how I get ready. I am ready. I think we saw that today. I think he looked good today. He ripped off a big long run, which again, grain of salt.
There's no tackling.
No pads. Those windows look huge right now, and by the time the season comes, they're going to look smaller. But you can see like the possibility of him being an explosive player in this offense again, which if that does happen, is so huge for this team, as it's something they've really lacked over the last couple of years as a home run hitter.
Well, I thought it was a little telling too that run in particular came later in practice. There were a few other reps that he had where, I don't know, maybe it would have been a 2-3 yard run in real life, but once he got going, once he kind of got used to, all right, this is how this offense is, he fit much more naturally in it. And so I just think he had to shake that rust off, and same for Lattimore, frankly.
Yeah, and I mean, he said something, everybody runs the same plays, and to a certain extent that's true, but it is a new offense, and it is going to be a little bit different, the timing of things and when you get the ball and exactly how you're supposed to run. But at the same time, Jeff, they're not playing on Sunday either. Like, he's got all of training camp to get used to this too.
Yeah.
I don't think it's any cause for concern.
He's the last guy I'd really worry about. He's one of the smartest players they've ever had here.
Yep.
Football wise, he's going to be on point. Now, I think he was the guy Dennis Allen did allude to. Remember that blitz that Alante Taylor came clean as a whistle on, and I think that was his blitz pickup. That's what DA alluded to. He said there's going to be some things he's going to, by not being here, there's going to be some missed assignments, but we got plenty of time till the start of the season. But
Yeah.
I do think those are the kind of things that are going to take him a little more time in the offense to get down. But we're in June. He's fine.
Yeah, he is. I mean, you're absolutely right about that. He's super intelligent.
Yes.
That comes across from talking to him for 2 minutes. You were just totally aware this guy is very, very smart. And then you hear everything to back it up from coaches who say he picks up everything like that. Not worried about him picking up the offense at all.
The Saints have a lot of guys who are facing, if not make or break years, then certainly big years. Lattimore's one of them. Cam Jordan's another one. I mean, they've got some on the offensive line. Alvin Kamara might be at the top of that list because, as you said, he's really kind of been on a downturn the last couple of years, and he turns 29 this summer. He's right around that age when running backs start to fall off. Pretty clear he believes that's not going to happen, that he can rebound.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm really, Jeff and I have argued about this a little bit. I'm really interested to see what he looks like within a functioning offense and what he looks like when he's not playing out of a role that he should be in. Yeah. The Saints had him just slamming into the left guard 15 times a game. And trying to be this bell cow running back the last 2 years. It's not who he is. I think he's the player who type of player who kind of belongs in this type of offensive scheme where you're emphasizing space and fluidity. I think that's the type of scheme that is going to bring the best out of him. Can he still be that guy that we saw in the first 5 years of his career? I mean, I don't know. It remains to be seen because we haven't seen it for 2 years. I look back today, his long run from the last 2 years was 27 yards, 2 years combined. He's got 6 runs of 20 plus in the last 3 seasons.
I'm not sure he had any last year.
He did not. His long was 17 last year. So, that's not his standard. That's not what the Saints expect out of him. They need more out of him. And if they can get a couple of the home run style plays out of him, I mean, again, really big deal for this offense. But to your point, this is a huge year for him. They didn't touch his contract this offseason, which they normally do. I think he's set to count 29 million, 25 million, something like that against their salary cap next year. That number's probably not going to exist. So they've got to figure out exactly what he is, what his role is in this offense. Can he still be a star player, and then figure out what to do with his contract after that?
What's the counter argument, Dunk?
Well, I think we got to find out if he's still got the physical ability to be that guy. I think that's what it is. I do think this scheme does kind of play to his strengths. He's got great vision. That's one of his great strengths as a runner. And this scheme does rely a lot on instincts and vision. I mean, DA talked about it today, when to keep stretching it, when to cut back. That's going to take reps in the system, though, and getting used to that. But they've been running outside zone here a lot. It's not like they've never run that. They've run it. He knows how to run it. But I think the blocking schemes, getting used to these guys getting downfield, that's going to take a little bit of time. But I just have to see him get in the open field against these NFL caliber athletes and make guys miss like he did early in his career. He had some times last year he could have had longer than 17-yard runs, and he couldn't make the guy miss. So that's not on the offensive line. That's not on the scheme. That's on his athletic ability in the open field, making a guy miss. That's what elite running backs do, and I haven't seen that. So I think we're going to find out this year a lot about it.
And I think the Saints are on both sides of this debate. Luke, you mentioned it just a second ago, but they didn't touch his contract, giving them some wiggle room if they need to get out of it eventually. You know, it's still going to be painful because of the way they've restructured it, but they're trying not to touch it as much as possible. So when that time comes, they can get out of it. But at the same time, you look at their changes this offseason, they changed the offensive line. They changed with 3 new starters. They've changed the coaching staff, you know, or the offensive coaching staff from pretty much everyone but the tight ends coach. But they didn't change the running backs. That room is the same pretty much. And so, you know, they're banking that he can still be the Alvin Kamara that we, you know, have gotten to know with some tweaks, but they're also preparing themselves for in case that day comes and he doesn't perform the way he's supposed to, that they have an out.
Yeah, and I think Kendry Miller is an exciting player too. He's got to stay healthy.
It's his birthday today.
Has he turned 22? 21?
Yeah, I think he might just be 21. He was
Yeah,
young.
I think he was 21 because I think he spent his entire rookie year as a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering correctly.
And I mean, that's you talk about outs contract-wise, but that's their other out is
Sure.
if Alvin Kamara is not productive. Because, look, around the league, running backs have been devalued. They're not paid as much. People think they're kind of dime a dozen. You can just plug somebody else in. It's not entirely true. I mean, there's clearly guys who are going to make more out of a situation.
Well, and
than
there
others.
are exceptions to that. And Alvin Kamara's true value to this team when he's at his peak is as a receiver. I mean, he caught 80-plus balls in each of his first 3 seasons in the NFL.
He led the team in receptions last year, I believe.
Did he top Olave?
It was close.
It was close.
I mean, his yardage was nowhere near, but yeah.
But that's the thing is like sure he's a running back and he piles up running yards, but like effectively he was their slot receiver for a long time, right? And that's where his value is. And you know we've spent a lot of time talking about him as a runner. What we didn't see today was them throw him a pass. I'm really interested to see what he can be in this offense. I mean, Christian McCaffrey put up huge numbers as a receiver in San Francisco. You know, can he get back to being an explosive pass catcher? I mean, I think that's on the table, but like, you know, got to see it.
Yeah, and that's a thing where as you teach a guy the offense, maybe you start with the running plays and then move on to passing routes, and it could be something they build on because it's just been the one day. Third guy we were going to kind of hone in on, and we'll wrap things up at the end too. But third guy was a guy who was not at practice today, and that's Ryan Ramczyk. We've talked about this for weeks now, months, that we don't expect Ryan Ramczyk to be ready for the 2024 season. Just another kind of piece of confirmation of that today. He was not. He is excused from minicamp. He will not be here this week. All the coaches know it because he's not ready to even kind of do a lot of stuff off to the side. He's back at home in Wisconsin. He's rehabbing the injury. I guess they haven't obviously closed the door yet on Ramczyk playing, but I think the Saints are preparing to be without him.
Yeah, I just read between the lines, you know, read the facial expression when Dennis Allen's talking. I mean, every single possible thing you could read is pointing toward Ramczyk not playing this year and maybe ever again. Yeah, it hasn't sounded good for a long time. I think the last time we got even a remotely positive update was at the Combine.
Yep.
And then shortly after that at the owners' meetings, they're like, and everything since then, I think somebody asked what his progress was. Dennis Allen today was like none. No
Well,
progress.
did he have a setback, or is it positive? It didn't move in any direction.
Yeah,
They said no, it's
Stagnant.
not trending in any direction. That's what he said.
yeah.
That's do not put that on me.
which that means it's trending in a bad direction,
Yes.
right? If you're just talking about his availability, I think it's just extremely unlikely that we see him wear a uniform this
John Benton, the offensive line coach, referred to him as an injured casual.
Yeah.
Not an injured casualty, an injured casual. I was like, okay.
never heard that
season.
one before.
Maybe he misspoke, but
He did misspeak, but
Casualty's not a good word either, though.
No.
I mean,
it's a shame for an all-pro player to be called an injured casual.
And he's one of the guys we're all talking about here are all 2017 draft that historic draft class. It's been the core of the team. All 3 of these guys, they're the last 3 standing. It's interesting to see they're all at kind of a crossroads in their careers here. And I think Ramczyk, I mean, there's a little nuance here, right? I mean, the Saints, I think, are probably playing a little bit of a game with the salary cap here.
Yeah.
You know, if they can IR him, he gets paid, and then the Saints can take care of they take less of a salary cap hit in the future. I think that's my instincts are that's what's going on.
Yes, I think if their cap situation was different, you know, we'd be having a different conversation about Ryan Ramczyk.
Now, what are the logistics of that? Does he have to be on the opening day 53 in order for them to IR him and all of that to take place?
No, because they can just put him on IR before. But that if they put him on IR before the 53, that means he's guaranteed to miss a season.
Right.
Right.
So,
Which, at this
I
point,
think
is,
they've actually changed that this year. Weirdly enough,
that's why I'm asking, because I remember there's some sort of a change in that.
but I mean, he'll open camp on like physically unable to perform, so
but
it doesn't really.
the cap ramifications are really, you know, if he were to say retire, it would accelerate.
Everything would come forward.
Yeah, it would accelerate all the money they've pushed back, and they would have to eat it all at once. So really, he may have, and this is just speculating, but he may have already decided to retire, and that he's not going to play football again. But you know, this will just be like a, you know, in what's the word I'm looking for? In theory, he's on the team this year, when in reality, it's, you know, his career might be over already.
Well, I think why this was newsworthy today specifically is because of the excused absence
Right.
portion of it. It's
Right.
you know, Chase Young is injured right now, but he's in the building. He's rehabbing. There are a handful of guys that have longer term injuries where we don't know until training camp whether they might be available or not, but they're still showing up to the facility. You know, where Ramczyk's at right now with his knee is he's not even at that stage, and so I think that tells you a lot.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we did see Chase Young today. Kool-Aid McKinstry was off to the side. He was working. He's after his foot surgery. I'm always forgetting what he's had.
Jones
fracture.
You know, so we've seen Chris Olave is still in the non-contact injury or non-contact jersey, but he's getting over his shoulder injury.
He looked completely fine.
Doesn't seem any worse for wear.
Looks like their best player.
What else stuck out to y'all from the first day of minicamp? And obviously just one day, and it's just the part that's open to the media and et cetera, et cetera. But you mentioned EQ St. Brown as kind of an unsung player to watch.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who's gotten a lot of work with the second team. You know, Jeff mentioned Jay Kaner looks sharp. Well, he's throwing to St. Brown a lot of the time. And
True.
we've seen St. Brown, the Detroit one, torch these guys. So maybe he'll have some of that family history and wipe off. But I don't know. I mean, that's receiver is a spot that is really competitive right now. Like, if you would have asked me a week ago, I would have said Cedric Wilson. I mean, Cedric Wilson has gotten first team reps, even over A.T. Perry. I thought Rashid Shaheed had a really great day. He was really involved, as we mentioned earlier. But that's a spot where, you know, I think a lot of guys are in the mix. They tried out Russell Gage today, the former Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Atlanta Falcons receiver. So
And LSU, yeah.
oh yeah, I'm from here. Sorry.
Yeah. But I mean, to your point, after Olave and Shaheed, there's playing time available
Yes.
at that position. I mean, and
it's wide open.
It looks like they've got some guys who can fill that. They just have to figure out who.
Well, you're leading Duncan right now talking about his undrafted free agent pick to make the team.
Yeah. I'm on a few guys.
You have Mason Tippin Island over there, or what?
Yeah.
Are you?
I mean,
Oh, is that really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like this. He's my like camp beast, my early
Yeah.
camp beast. He's getting a
He
lot of
showed
run.
quite a jaw today, getting up from that collision. Accidentally. There was a bang play, nothing intentional, but
Yeah, it was
just bad circumstances.
accidental contact between Anthony Orgy, who outweighs him by about 40 pounds.
Right.
Both going for the ball.
And there's nothing you can do in that situation.
Yeah.
Stuff like that kind of happens
But
sometimes.
that was one of those plays we talked about. I think it was from Spencer Rattler, right? Spencer Rattler tried to fit one in, and that's one that would have been a completion at South Carolina. And it was bang because, as they say, the windows are smaller in the NFL. You could see his arm strength, and he thought, I can fit that thing in, and he couldn't. But not because it was a bad throw. It was just those guys are so athletic, and
The timing is different.
it was a perfect example of
And
that.
you're talking about a third string linebacker. Like, these guys are freaks, all of them. But Tipton's fun. He's a little on the smaller side. I think he's 5'11", 190 pounds maybe. But he's getting some work with the punt return team.
Lance
he's-
Moore like.
That's exactly what I said.
Isn't
At
it?
camp.
I mean,
yeah.
he's very similar. in
Yeah.
build, even kind of looks the way he runs. Very similar. Might be a little faster than Lance, but
St. Brown, on the other hand, I mean, that guy looks the part. He's a big body. He can.
Yeah, it's another thing that we were talking about today. Is he's wearing number 13. It almost looks like you're just like. He doesn't play like Michael Thomas, but like you could
body's-
convince yourself into thinking that's Michael Thomas out there on the field the way his body's shaped. So, they have some interesting guys for sure. I still don't think they're done there. It would not be a surprise to me if they added to that group, just because.
You have punter Renfro pre-written, or
I do.
well, I think that the
I've had it
fact,
pre-written for.
Little inside baseball. We pre-write some stories just so we can have them out there quickly in
Just in
case those
case,
things
yeah.
happen.
It's been
And then they never
pre-written
see the
for-
light of day if it doesn't happen. But
Been
we
pre-written for about 2 months now.
kind of make some predictions.
but I think the fact that they had Russell Gage in just tells you they're going to keep looking, right? I mean, they're going to keep looking at that position. I don't think they feel like 100% confident they've got all the guys.
They've got some nice players in there, but like, the reality is they have two guys they know are good, and then a lot of others who have either kind of bounced around the league a little bit with some success here and there, or kind of unproven, or in A.T. Perry's case, who's just kind of like flashed for 4 or 5 games at the end of the year. If either Olave or Shaheed were to miss time, which is like something that both have dealt with in their NFL career, like what are your options there?
They played the second half in Atlanta last year with like
They've had to do it a lot.
reserve players at all 5 receiver spots. I mean,
They've had to do it a lot. And, Drew Brees isn't coming through the door to throw 4 touchdowns to undrafted free agents in one game. They need guys there. And who knows? I mean, some of these, like EQ St. Brown may be a guy for them. Cedric Wilson maybe comes out and has a career year for them. He's had some nice seasons in the past. Maybe A.T. Perry develops, like maybe. But like I still think that they're a little light there in terms of depth when the top 2 guys have both had injury issues throughout their career.
I'll tell you another thing. Luke and I were watching practice today when Derek Carr said it. Remember we were at the Zurich. It's going to look different often. That's true in that they're definitely a lot more condensed sets, a lot more 2-back sets.
that's the thing I noticed.
That's
a lot
the
more
thing
two-back
I think
sets.
he's talking about. You notice they're in condensed formations a lot. Every once in a while they'll split one guy out wide, but for the most part, the formations are tighter, and there's almost always 2 backs in, and it's pretty exciting when you do think about it with Taysom Hill, and we saw Kamara and Taysom Hill in the backfield today a few times. You think, wow, that could be interesting with their array of receivers and those 2 backs. That will stress a defense. Who do you put on those 2 guys because they're both capable of coming out of the backfield? I think that's going to be interesting to watch.
Motions look different, and today they were wearing out the middle of the field, which is something they didn't really do very well in the last couple of years. Like a very perimeter-oriented passing attack. So I think that's exciting. I think if you can use the whole field, obviously that only benefits you.
It does feel like what you said earlier. If the offense is going well, it's going to be 4 yards, 8 yards, 6 yards, 27 yards.
Yeah.
2 yards, 8 yards, 6 yards, 20 yards, and you're gonna kind of get those little chunks and stress the defense in such a way to where they have to leave something open, and then you can go big.
And I would say this too. I mean, look, we still got 2 more days, but for the most part, I think considering it's a new scheme and a whole new offensive staff, they've looked pretty clean to me. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of false starts. I haven't seen a lot of sloppiness for this time of year, which is kind of natural when you got a whole new scheme in there. To me, it's been pretty efficient and clean, relatively speaking. I thought it would look a little more disorganized, and actually, I think it's looked the exact opposite.
Yeah,
and that's a credit to the staff.
the re-huddle is the most noticeable thing where they have to kind of go over and start the cadence again and all that. But that did that even happen today?
I don't think so.
I don't think it did.
Yeah,
It's happened before, but it seems like they're getting better at that.
yeah. That's something that the players have said is that this coaching staff really stresses the details, that there's a lot of accountability, and that I think we're seeing it in place.
All right. Well, speaking of accountability, have you hit the like button yet? Come on. We're
Yeah,
gonna
we got
wrap
to go
things
to
up.
Super Bowl, baby. Super
Yeah.
Bowl.
3-2 start after 5 weeks. Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's
chair.
Rod Walker's. We're gonna remake that poster if the Saints start 3-2. Prayers answered. We'll be back maybe Friday. I won't be here, but you guys may be back Friday. If
No,
not,
let's call it Friday.
I'm not going to be
I'll
here.
host.
all right. It'll be
I can make
be
it.
Luke, Jeff, and Rod on Friday then, and then we'll be back with you next week as well. Saints Insider is with you all summer long into training camp in California. We'll be there too, and we will talk to you next week. For Matthew Paris, Luke Johnson, Jeff Duncan, our producer Norman Bell, I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching.
I might be hungover Friday.
Do tell.
It's going to Clancy's for dinner, birthday dinner.
I hope that made it in.
I mean, we don't.